This is Rosen Institute's Your Law Firm, where Ned Days and Lee Rosen cover management, marketing, finance, and new technologies for building the practice you deserve. Rosen Institute members received this episode early, as well as exclusive segments on leveraging technology for everything or lagging behind, and an answer to a member question about cutting down on client paperwork. Get access to everything you're missing at roseninstitute.com/join. Here's Ned Days.
It's time for your tech tip. As we get the ability to add more and more services directly into our AI tools through skills and connectors and MCP servers, I feel like a pattern is rearing its head that we have seen before. Back in the dinosaur times, if you wanted to have something decent, and I'm putting decent in air quotes, to watch on TV, you had to pay for a cable package. The cable company sold you a bunch of different channels, you paid a monthly fee, and you got to watch a bunch of stuff from different providers. Then the streaming explosion happened. Screw those cable companies, I can just pay a few bucks a month and stream whatever I want at any time from something like Netflix. And then eventually you needed Netflix and Amazon and Peacock and Apple TV and Disney Plus, and you're back to paying just as much, if not more, as you did with cable, but now you have 24 accounts to manage. There is a skill called Last 30 Days that I've been playing around with a lot and have found very interesting. You give it a topic and it researches that topic across Reddit, social media sites, web searches, prediction markets, and creates a comprehensive summary for you. It is great for getting a read on what's happening in your local market, for checking terms and trends you don't quite understand, or to get an explanation and comparison of software and services. Now, it takes some setup to work properly. First up, it has to run in a tool like Claude Code that can control your machine and run tasks. And to get the full benefit, you have to sign up for some extra accounts. I had to create an account to get an XAI API key to search across Twitter more effectively. I had to create an account with scrapecreators.com, which provides API access to search and grab profile information across just about every social media platform. And those are just the two that I remember off the top of my head. Not the end of the world, but I now have a few more dashboards and a few more pay-as-you-go services that I really only use with this skill. So I thought maybe I should try to take advantage of some of these services I am now paying for outside of this somewhat techie and limited skill that I've configured. That scrapecreators.com service allows you to use it across your normal AI chats and the coding variants like Claude Code or OpenAI Codex by using their MCP server. If you're not familiar with MCP servers, this is a way to connect other services and tools to your AI platform so that it can pull in external data or execute tasks in those platforms from your AI conversations or workflows. You can send a Slack message or update a HubSpot contact from an interaction in ChatGPT or Claude, for example. Adding the MCP server for Scrape Creators is just a matter of going to the connectors menu in my Claude account and pasting in the URL that Scrape Creators gives you, and then authorizing the account. Once that is done, I can have it do things like provide the latest topics from a subreddit, grab somebody's latest X posts, or get full transcripts of someone's last 5 YouTube videos and use them as the basis for a project. Which is all great, but again, for every service I want to add and configure, it is another account, another billing profile, another thing to eventually break when my credit card expires. Monid.ai, that's MONID.ai, is a bit of a glimpse at a possible way around this issue. Yes, this is another service, another dashboard, another credit card to connect, and it is a very new service. I don't know that I would pin my hopes on this being the solution to our proliferating platforms problem, but I think it is an interesting example of what may become more common as we look for more convenient ways to get all of this additional data into our AI tools. Monid's setup is similar to these other services. You add a custom connection, paste in the MCP server URL, and then authenticate in your browser. And for right now, Monid does a lot of what Scrape Creators does. It is focused on giving you access to real-time information from social media and platforms like Reddit and YouTube. But it offers a few other tools as well, and the idea is that this will grow. New services will be made available. Monid is essentially acting as a middleman between you and the other data providers, but there's no new configuration or billing or account creation necessary. In fact, their whole pitch is that you basically ask for the data you want, and their service figures out which subcontractor or subservice they've partnered with has what you are after, and then provides what it is that you wanted. But figuring out which service has what, buying and paying for credits, and all the other headaches are taken care of in your Monad account. It's all done behind the scenes. You just ask it to flesh out a document with information from someone's LinkedIn profile, or that you want to build a page that incorporates reviews from a Google business listing, or that you want flight details by flight number, or you want information from the EU trademark database in a project. And it figures out the details without you needing to figure out if you have a connected service that has access to that information in the event that your LLM tool doesn't have the latest. Now, because Monad is new, it is a little rough around the edges, not necessarily in using it. I haven't run into any major issues in my testing, but if you click the link that is supposed to tell you the 200 plus tools they give you access to, you get a message saying that's coming soon. So my dear friend Claude and I did a little probing, and from what I could find, in addition to accessing social media, Google News, live web search, and that kind of information, you can do some things regarding website and email configuration, like check domain configs, check email deliverability settings, and the tech stack implemented on a website. You can determine a company's registration type and country. You can search some EU-related government databases. You can find work permit requirements by nationality and enrich data that you might already have by providing additional personal details based on a name or email address. And the promise, aside from listing what's currently available, which hopefully they will get to soon, is that more and more services will be added, that it will act as a bit of a one-stop shop for data that may be too recent or too guarded to show up in a generic web search that your AI tool performs on the fly. Whether Monad itself becomes the go-to solution for this, or multiple services for different spheres pop up, is anyone's guess. But I think it points to a slightly less chaotic future where we don't have to be hunting for the latest, greatest tool and setting up yet another account and billing platform, but where we can just ask for what we want and let the tools take care of the rest. I'm Ned Days, and that's your tech tip. And now for your moment of concise advice. I once got fired by my own virtual assistant. This was many years ago during one of several side hustle eras. I hired a contractor to do content research, reach out to law students about writing projects, triage my inbox, manage my calendar, the normal kind of stuff you get a virtual assistant to do. That was the plan anyway. I felt like a real hotshot. I had staff, which meant I had truly arrived. She was actually my second contractor hire for this phase of my life. I had hired a guy in the Philippines, as was the fashion at the time, to do search engine optimization so that I could focus on more important and valuable work, like hiring the virtual assistant. I don't recall exactly what he did other than charge me a couple of $100 a month to tell me that the engines had been optimized. Thinking back, I probably should have put that money into Bitcoin or Nvidia stock, but here we are. Now, since I had all of that free time not doing the SEO, I hired the VA to take care of the other duties. After about 3 weeks, she sent me a very polite email saying that she was letting me go as a client because I didn't actually have enough work for her to do. I had given her maybe 2 hours of an expected 20 or so, but mostly she had been waiting around so that I could feel important. Now, regardless of what I told myself, I wasn't actually buying help. I was purchasing a story about myself and who I was as a budding entrepreneur. I wish I could say that my vanity is unique, but a lot of hiring decisions work the same way. Hiring decisions almost always involve some level of ego, pride, and how we want to be perceived, or maybe a story we want to believe about ourselves. And this is nowhere more true than the first hire, going from 0 to 1 other person in the firm. The good news is that your first hire is probably not going to work out anyway. There is your cheery tip for the day. But everybody wants to know, when is it time to hire somebody? What most people are doing when they are asking about whether or not it is time to hire someone, specifically an attorney, is they are fishing for a number, that magic revenue threshold when they have validation that now is the time. Realistically, these days, that number is something like $300,000. But the number is not the answer. If you want a minimum threshold, there it is, but it is a terrible, terrible idea to use that as your guidestone. There are usually other factors at play that are more important. Why are you busy? Are you charging too little? Do your clients suck? Are you neglecting to take advantage of software and tools that can make you faster? And a bigger question, Are you marketing to an extent that you can bring in enough clients to keep this train rolling once you have the overhead of another attorney? A lot of solos think that hiring somebody means they get breathing room. Nope, you need to keep the pipeline twice as full, at least. Let's do a little thought experiment. Let's consider an attorney billing $500 an hour who is already generating $400,000 in revenue. If that lawyer finds a way to bill 1 additional hour per week, that is over $26,000 in annual revenue. And all of that is essentially profit. There is no new salary, no benefits, no training time, no management burden, no new software licenses or whatever else is involved. None of that. 2 hours is well over $50,000. Or play around with the rate or dropping the worst client or whatever other levers you want to mess with. Now compare that to hiring an associate. The new associate brings in a 6-figure salary or close to it, payroll taxes, benefit costs, and the heavy management overhead of weekly check-ins and course correction. Your take-home actually drops in the short term, maybe for a year or more, before the new hire generates enough billable work to cover their own cost. It is remarkably easy to scale a bad business model. You can throw bodies at the problem for years in some cases. You build a real-looking enterprise with all the trappings of a successful firm from the outside, and then 5 years in, 10 years in, you are taking home the same money you were when it was just you, sometimes less, except now you are stressing way more about the payroll every month than you used to. And maybe you are not thinking about another attorney. Maybe it is some kind of administrative position. When it comes to that first hire, you put yourself through absolute agony trying to figure out which role to fill first and pinning your hopes on finding exactly the right person to fill that position. We love to draw up charts and Venn diagrams weighing whether it's a paralegal or an admin or an associate, and you might obsess over whether they need 10 years of experience or they should be green enough to mold into our own little weird way of doing things fairly easily. But especially with the first hire, it usually doesn't matter that much because that person is probably not going to work out perfectly anyway. And it will unfortunately boil down to being a you problem. You probably don't know how to manage humans properly yet if this is going to be your first employee. You are going to micromanage them or completely undermanage them. Management is partially science, but a lot of it has to be learned by burning your fingers on the hot stove. You can't skip the hot stove phase. If your long-term vision for your practice relies on building a team, you eventually have to become a competent boss. So stop trying to hire the perfect lifelong cornerstone employee right out of the gate, and if you can't help but hire somebody, just pull the trigger. Don't treat hiring this person as a way to solve all of your firm's future problems, so much as a way that you can get the messy, necessary experience of failing at management over and done with. And maybe you already have a small team. You are used to hiring and managing. Maybe when it's time to hire, you are just replacing or swapping out an employee or a role that you know actually works for your practice. When somebody quits, our reflex is to replace them. I did this instinctually for years. Somebody gave notice and I had the listing up on Indeed that afternoon. I had a whole folder of job descriptions saved and ready to go. It took me an embarrassingly long time to learn to pause and ask whether that role still needed to exist. When I started at the practice, we had 3 or 4 paralegals at the firm. Over a few years, we replaced about 80% of what they did with software, workflows, and automation. The remaining 20% got pushed to the associates. We eliminated the entire category of paralegal. The role didn't need to exist anymore at our firm. You might be in a different position. And I'm not saying that you need to be ruthless about replacing humans and outsourcing everything. We got rid of paralegals and added attorneys. We had more marketing staff and administrative staff by that point. You don't want to hire out of vanity, but you also don't want to just strip away everything from the practice out of a fixation on minimalism either. The goal is to make sure the positions you have and the people you have are serving the business model that you want to build. You don't want to keep around unnecessary positions out of nostalgia, but you also don't want to shoot yourself in the foot in the name of flexibility if that is not your primary objective. When you get the itch to hire, either just because you are in the mood or because somebody leaves, you should ask some questions. Does this role still need to exist? Could a contractor do it more effectively? Could software do most of it? Could 2 roles become 1? Hiring is tricky because a lot of us want a checklist of arbitrary metrics we can look at that tell us it is time to pull the trigger. Because no such checklist really exists, we end up going on our gut, which is shockingly tied to our ego, and not looking at the decision in a way that relates to the practice we have, the practice we want, and the other levers we have available to get what we are after. That's your moment of concise advice. Wrapping up from Jacksonville, thank you for joining us today. Never forget that what you are doing is important work. Small, consistent steps focusing on marketing, management, and technology are how we build better firms. And you are 1 week closer to the practice you deserve. Until next time, I'm Ned Days.
Thanks for listening to Your Law Firm. Subscribe to the Friday File at roseninstitute.com and join thousands of other lawyers who are working on instead of in their businesses. You'll find safe, successful, actionable approaches for transforming your practice. Join us today at roseninstitute.com.